Chapter 15. All the shouting woke up Felix Henderson McMurdo. He yawned, stretched, wondered where he was, vaguely remembered, and stumbled from his bed to peer out of the window. There was a right old fuss going on down in the courtyard. Monks were running all over the place, hitching up their habits and looking most distraught. Felix suddenly caught sight of a man in a Highland garb. He was waving a claymore. He was also shouting things such as, "Where is he?" and "Hand him over or else." Felix sank down beneath the window. He'd seen that man before. Where was it? Back at the police station. That was where. He was one of the wild warriors of West Lothian. Felix began to chew on his knuckles. What could this mean? Clearly it could mean only one thing. There could be no other logical explanation. The wild warrior was looking for him. The townsfolk of Sheila Nagi had obviously gone completely insane. They'd sent a mercenary, a hired killer, to track him down. This was no laughing matter. "I shall have to get out of here," said Felix. "But who?" And then, as chance would have it, he just happened to espy nothing less than a monk's habit, his very size, hanging on the back of the cell door. "No," said Felix Henderson McMurdo. "That's handy. How was I supposed to know?" Cornelius threw his hands high. "You should have told me." "We'll have to go down there at once." Tuppe drummed his fists on the dashboard. "Put the car in gear. We'll smash the door down." "That is somewhat drastic, don't you think?" "Drastic? Who's down there, do you think? Eh, Cornelius? About to take it out of my uncle. Come on, take a little guess." "It's a Campbell," said Cornelius in a low tone. Even though he was whispering, there was no mistaking that voice. "How come this Campbell is always one step ahead of you, Cornelius?" The tall boy shrugged. "I don't honestly know." "Put the car in gear, Mr. Murphy." Mr. Murphy put the car in gear. Felix Henderson McMurdo pulled out his cowl to shelter his face, tucked his hands into the opposite sleeves, and hurried along the corridor, which would have been all the better for redecoration or demolition. He hadn't gone more than a few yards before the sound of marching feet reached his ears. There was a sound to the right and one to the left. Felix chose the one to the right, turned the handle and slipped quietly away. He pressed shut the door and pressed his ear to it. The marching marched up, marched past, and marched off. "Phew," said Felix Henderson McMurdo. "That was close." "What was close?" asked a voice. Felix turned in horror to view the speaker. He was a very small speaker, a miniature monk. Felix recalled a Toby jug his mum once kept on the mantel-shelf. He recalled also how he'd broken it. The monk stood upon a high stool. He had a large screwdriver in his hand, and before him on a work table there was a lot of complicated electrical gubbinry. There was an awful lot of other gubbinry about the room, stacked up on shelves, piled into corners. It was all very broken-looking gubbinry. "Are you the repairman from St. Creeves?" asked the tiny monk. Yes, that's right," Felix replied. "What needs fixing?" The Cadillac rolled down the hill towards St. Sacco Benedito. "Faster, faster!" cried Tuppe. No, replied Cornelius. Yes, we have to get inside." "I know we do. That's why I left the door on the latch when I came out." "It's a karaoke machine," the small monk explained. "It certainly is." Felix approached the work table, rolling up his sleeves as he did so. "I'm so glad you've come." The small monk made a large and joyful face. "St. Creeves promised they'd send their best man over. You're him then, aren't you?" "Well, actually, no." Felix rooted around on the work table. The small monk's large and joyful face shrank away. "Who are you then?" "I am a victim of circumstance." "Oh." The small monk nodded thoughtfully. "I'm one of those also." He reached up to Felix and shook his hand. "Hello anyway," he sighed. "I'm Brother 8. "Whatcha?" said Felix. "I'm Felix." "I suppose you know nothing about karaoke machines?" "On the contrary." Felix twiddled his fingers over the bench-top confusion. "I know all there is to know. Hand me your screwdriver." The car was parked out of sight, and the epic twosome came forwards through the long grass, commando fashion. "I don't really need to crawl." Tuppe plucked a daisy from his teeth. "I could simply walk and be about the same height." "There might be lookouts." Cornelius put his hand in something nasty. "Lookouts with guns." "I can crawl." Tuppe continued to crawl. "What's that funny smell?" he asked. The abbot's study was no longer in darkness. The heavy curtains had been biblically rent asunder to reveal an enormous stained glass window of bowel-moving vulgarity. This depicted another saintly muscle boy. This one wore the standard wistful expression and regulation gossamer pausing pouch. He was being torn between two stallions, which were in every detail anatomically correct. All about, spectators looked on with appropriately glazed expressions, hands joined either in prayer or appreciation. It was hard to tell. One appeared to be reading a newspaper, another fondled a penguin, which possibly had some Masonic significance. What light struggled through this travesty lit upon a room of singular hideousness. In fact, so singularly hideous was it that it will receive no mention here whatsoever. At its centre sat a man of middle years. He was bound and gagged. His body was finely muscled. He wore nothing but a gossamer pausing pouch. The abbot, for it was he, glared daggers at the fellow seated upon his desk. The fellow who wore the abbot's own robes of office, and who was even now lighting up one of his best post-Lent cigars. The Campbell, for it was he, grinned evilly. A shaft of sunlight, entering by the formerly mentioned stained-glass pausing pouch, haloed his baldy head. "I won't keep you long," spake the Campbell, puffing on the panatella. "I only want the papers." The abbot replied, struggling heroically and bringing areas of muscle definition into dramatic prominence. "Sorry, I didn't quite catch that." The Campbell leaned forward and tore off the abbot's gag. "I said you were fat-ass, baldy-headed little dough-rag," quoth the abbot. Monks were being herded into the courtyard. There seemed to be a lot of confusion, and Hamish was in the thick of it. He was demanding to know the whereabouts of a certain Brother Tuppe. The monks, for their part, were trying to be helpful. They were saying things mostly to the effect of, "Brother who?" "I have this contract," Brother 8 told Felix. "It brings in a bit of revenue for the monastery. I used to be an electrical engineer, you see, so I can fix things. Well, some things, small things sometimes, but this," he pointed to the dismembered karaoke machine, "this has me completely baffled. It was sent up from London. The note said it had a small screw loose." Felix gazed about the floor. "You seem to have rather a lot of small screws loose now," he observed. "They keep coming out." Brother 8 twiddled at a dial. A small screw dropped from it. "There's another," he sighed. McMurdo gave his head a thoughtful nod. "You have to defenestrate them," he said. "Come again?" "Throw them all out the window." "Well, all of them? That can't be right, surely." "Oh, yes, it's right, all right. I read this book once. Trust me, I'll soon get this blighter going again." Now. The Campbell blew cigar smoke into the abbot's face. "Let's have no rudeness from you. I need to speak to Brother Tuppe, and I need to speak to him now." "What is your name?" the abbot inquired. "Campbell," said the Campbell. "A Campbell?" The abbot flexed his pectorals. "I might have known it. Sheep shaggers and well poisoners to a man. A pox on all—" The Campbell kicked him from his chair, leapt down from the desk and stood over him. He pulled out his pistol and glared down the long barrel. "You are unwontedly outspoken for a bound man in a spandex codpiece. How would you like it if I took my gun and—" He bent down and whispered specific details into the abbot's ear. "Well," said the abbot wistfully, "I'm game if you are." Cornelius flattened himself against the monastery floor in the generally approved manner. "You cover me," he told Tuppe. "I'm going in." "Cover you? With what?" "I think this valve is supposed to go somewhere." Brother 8 looked all forlorn. "But I've never seen a layout like this before. I'm beginning to wonder if it's some kind of practical joke. The karaoke machine seems to be full of rubbish. Old tennis balls with nails sticking in them, drinking straws, and look at this." He pointed to a clockwork mouse in a tiny treadmill. "I don't know how any of this would work at all." "I do," smiled Felix, who actually did. Hamish had his pistol out and waved it in the air as he marched up and down before the line of captured monks in the courtyard. The monks watched him at it. Beneath their habits, each was a potential Chippendale. Hamish ceased his marching and waggled his pistol at the nearest monk. "How many of ye should there be?" he demanded to know. Brother 5 grinned at the gunman. 23, said he. "And how many are here?" Hamish wasn't much of a numbers man when he ran out of fingers. Brother 5 did countings up. 21, he announced. "Then that's—" Hamish set about the subtraction. 2 missing." "I'm not missing." Brother 2 raised a hand upon a finely muscled arm. "I'm here."
"You what?"
Hamish hastened in his direction.
"What did you see?"
"I'm 2,
said 2.
"Don't get funny with me, laddie."
Hamish made a menacing expression.
No.
Brother 5 rose to Brother 2's defence.
2 is quite correct. 2. Yes, 2.
Hamish glared.
Yes, 2. It's 6 that's missing. 6? What do you mean 6? You said 2.
And 8, added a muscular monk. 8 isn't here either.
Who said that?
Hamish swung round. 7? Brother 7 put up his hand.
7? You just said 8.
6 and 8, said Brother 2, and all the monks began to nod in agreement. 6 and 8 it was.
Which makes 2. 6 and 8. That makes.
Hamish worried at his fingers.
That makes 15. 14.
Brother 2 corrected him.
14.
Does somebody want me? Asked Brother 14. You'll have to speak up if you do. I'm a little bit deaf.
I don't think.
The Campbell straightened up from a certain unmentionable acts.
That I'm quite getting my point across to you. Oh, you are. You are. I want Brother Tuppe.
I don't see what he's got that I haven't.
Possibly a lifespan extending beyond the next 5 seconds.
The Campbell cocked his weapon and pressed the muzzle to the abbot's forehead.
Listen, he continued, while you were locked up in your cupboard,
which I quite liked.
Shut up! While you were locked up in your cupboard, you no doubt heard what Mr. Murphy had to say. He was telling the truth when it came to the matter of pyrotechnics. I wouldn't think twice.
The Campbell snapped his fingers and fire branched between them. How'd you do that? The abbot looked on in no small awe.
Never you mind. Deliver Brother Tuppe to me immediately, or I'll shoot you in the head and burn the monastery to the ground.
You wouldn't prefer to torture it out of me just a little bit more?
No, I bloody well wouldn't.
The Campbell shook his baldy head. Strange nubbins and bumps now protruded from it, and his face had become curiously elongated.
It's Brother Tuppe were a quick end to you. That's about the size of it.
The abbot mulled it over. Oh, all right, he said sulkily. Brother Tuppe is probably in his workshop, up the stairs in the courtyard, and first door on the left. But listen, if you want to come back later, we could crack a bottle of Beaujolais and... Up the stairs from the courtyard, and beyond the first door on the left, Brother 8 watched Felix at work.
Are you sure you know what you're doing? He asked.
Of course I do. I've realigned the transponders and the inductance coils, cleaned the master cylinder and the circuit breakers in the forward manifold. The particle accelerator should be good for another 1,000 miles, as long as no one tries to push the electrostatic potential beyond the 15 million volt ceiling. Oh, and I've given the clockwork mouse a bit of a wind, so all we need now is a new fuse in the plug.
Gosh, said Brother 8, you certainly know your karaoke machines, friend.
I know this one well enough, said Felix. My dad built it. Cornelius crept along the nasty gallery towards the abbot's study. Tuppe crept along behind Cornelius.
This is a very horrid gallery.
Tuppe peered up at the paintings.
Why is it that so many martyrs get martyred in their underwear?
He wondered. I wish I had a stout stick about my person. Cornelius crept on. Psst. What do you mean, psst?
I don't mean anything, Tuppe replied, because I never said it.
The Campbells struggled to open the hinged portion of the abbot's stained glass window. You have to waggle its bottom about. The abbot waggled his. It always jams. The Campbell stepped back from the window, raised his pistol, and did the world of ecclesiastical art a big favour. Stained glass rained into the courtyard. A bitter argument of a numerological nature ceased, and all eyes turned to the breaker of the sacred panes.
Hamish! Screamed the Campbell. Up the stairs, first door on the left. Who? Hamish asked. First door on the left.
Brother 2 thought about it.
Ah, said he, that's where 8 will be. If there's 8 of them dug in there, I want back up, snarled Hamish. What do you mean? Your dad built it.
Brother 8 watched as Felix skillfully replaced the faceplate of the karaoke machine.
30 years ago, almost to the day.
Felix scooped up a few small screws and secured the faceplate. He cast those left over his left shoulder, which was easier to do than to say.
Long before I was born, of course, but I've still got all his plans.
Here, have a look at this. He spat onto his finger and applied it to a grimy little plaque at the base of the machine, bringing up a name. Brother 8 squinted.
The sing-along of McMurdo, he read. Pat Pending. Who is Pat Pending, then? Your dad's partner?
Felix wondered whether that was supposed to be funny.
Were you any good as an electrical engineer? He asked. Not really. Brother 8 hung his tiny head. I'm colourblind, you see. I was all right with the stripy wires, but the other two, well... Felix grimaced. Yeah, I can imagine. Anyway, my dad built this machine. It was a prototype. I can't imagine how it ended up here, though. I always thought it must have been destroyed in the explosion. Please! Brother 8 covered his ears. Not that word! Sorry. You had one or two of those yourself, then? And then some. That's why I became a monk, but I'd rather not talk about it, if you don't mind. Felix didn't mind. It was his shed, he said. His shed? Well, you know, that word happened. Mum had got him to build the shed as far away from the house as possible. Things occasionally went wrong with his inventions. How wrong? Brother 8 wondered whether he really wanted to know. The newspaper men blew it up out of all proportion. The newspaper men blew up his shed? No, it was a reactor in a spaceship that blew up the shed. Spaceship? What spaceship? The one he was building, so that Scotland would be the first country to put a man on the moon. The Scots are always me first to invent anything. Renowned the world over for it. The Scots invented television and a hovercraft and a steam engine. The first man to reach the South Pole was a Scot. Scot, said Brother 8. Scot? That's what I said. No, you said... No, never mind. Just let me get you straight. Your dad built a nuclear reactor in a shed to power a spaceship? To put a Scotsman on the moon, yes. Surely you remember the space race? Yes, but that's between Russia and America. Felix shook his head. Not a bit of it. It's between my dad and Mr. Patel, who runs a corner shop. Mr. Patel, who runs a corner shop? Oh, do you know him then? No. Brother 8 was becoming more than a little confused. I've never heard of him before. Oh, you'd like him. Felix gave the top of the karaoke machine a dust over with his sleeve. Very nice chap, although there was a bit of unpleasantness about his fag machine. And he was building a spaceship as well as your dad? Yeah, told you. So you can understand why Dad wanted to get his to the moon first. Well, yes. Dad was a Rangers supporter until his dying day. Hey? Rangers. You know, Mr. Patel is a Celtic fan. I said, psst. He said, psst. Tuppe clung to the tall boy's knee. Psst. That's what he said. Who is saying psst? Cornelius asked. Over here. A puff of cigarette smoke issued from behind an irregularly spaced column. Number 6. It's you. Number 6? Tuppe looked up at Cornelius. Cornelius looked down at Tuppe. Don't say it, he said. Over here. Papal Nugent Murphy. Something terrible is going on. Papal Nugent? Silence, Tuppe. He's one of the good guys. Tuppe. Brother 6 peeped around the column. Is that Brother Tuppe? It's his nephew. Cornelius made the introductions. Brother 6, meet Cardinal Tuppe, Fellow of the Holy See. He's come to supervise things. Brother 6 curtsied. Pleased to meet you, Your Eminence. Bless you, my son. Tuppe made a peace sign. Now what's this I hear about a spot of bother? Terrorists. I've seen their pictures in the paper. They were the wild warriors of West Lothian. Cornelius and Tuppe shared first prize in the Dismal Fears competition. Brother 6 went on. One's holding the abbot captive. I peeped in. Is your uncle thereafter, Eminence? I heard them talking. Then the gun went off. I took cover. Very wise, my son. Tuppe inclined his head. Where'd you keep your stout sticks? Down in the armoury, the brother replied, with all the serious weaponry. I'm sorry. Brother 8 scratched his tonsure. It was a St. Michael's close crop with a chevron razored out at the back in the form of stylised Y fronts. I don't seem to be able to follow any of this. Allow me to explain. Felix slotted a new fuse into the plug, screwed back its cover and pressed it into a wall socket. My dad was a follower of certain Hugo Rune. Scientific genius, Rune was. Reinvented the ocarina. Hated Bud Abbott. He taught Einstein everything he knew. Bud Abbott taught Einstein? Rune taught Einstein. Oh. Except Einstein got everything wrong. He thought the universe was a really complicated place. And isn't it? No. Felix shook his head. Not according to Rune. Rune said that people just try and make out it's complicated to prove how clever they are. Have you ever had the back of a transistor radio? Of course. I was an electrical engineer. But do you understand how it actually works? Not entirely. That's because it doesn't. Not in the way people think it does. Not really. I see. Brother 8 was beginning to regret that he'd never had a lock fitted. Ever heard of the crystal set? Felix went on. Is all this going to take very long? I heard footsteps in the corridor. I think there's someone at the door. Rune invented the crystal set to win a bet with Marconi. Another Scot, you notice. Marconi, a Scot? Muck-oni. That's how it's really spelled. Marconi was obsessed with big valves and coils and stuff. Rune said it was all just dressing. He bet Marconi that he could knock up a working wireless set with nothing more than contents of a nearest waste paper basket, which has happened to contain a cat's whisker, a piece of crystal, and... Oh, you've heard the story. Well, you know the outcome then. Rune certainly left the famous Scotsman with egg on his old grey beard. Funny how you don't see a lot of crystal sets around today. But you do, except now they're called transistor radios. Allow me to explain. Look, just explain about the nuclear reactor, the one that, Ain't mind a mushroom cloud. I was coming to that. Cold fusion. Rune made it work. It can power anything. Spaceship, you name it. All you need is a couple of tennis balls, a few nails, some drinking straws, a clockwork mouse, and a little treadmill. Well, I'm all finished here. Let's switch her on and see what happens. Felix reached towards the switch. Tuppe, Cornelius and Brother Six stood before a large, shining steel door. Brother Six tapped out the combination on one of those digital panel sort of arrangements that strong rooms and vaults always seem to have. Each little number had its own separate note. The sequence Brother Six tapped out played "Now is the hour." The door swished aside and Brother Six led the way in. Cornelius stopped short in the doorway. Tuppe stopped shorter. "Guns!" Cornelius gasped. "Guns," Brother Six agreed. "Always standard Vatican issue. Every monastery is kitted out. Always has been. We're only lightweight tactical here. The Jesuits had the nuclear stockpile. You know all about that, of course." Of course. Cornelius held his amazement in check. "They're all mint condition. We do naming of parts every Monday. Anything particular take your fancy?" Cornelius perused the hoard. Uzi 9mm, 45 long side with laser sight, X34 chain gun, 5.56 M249 squad automatic, pump action Winchester. "You sure you know your weapons, buddy? What do you want to take?" "Oh," said Cornelius Murphy. "Any derringers?" Tuppe asked. The explosion tore off the workroom door. Shards of monkey wood burst into the workroom. Felix and Brother Eight gaped white-faced in horror as the grenade smoke slowly cleared to reveal Hamish and Sawney. They were both carrying guns. Hamish stepped forward and brandished his. "Brother Tuppe," he demanded. "Which one of you is Brother Tuppe?" Felix hastily concealed his face beneath his cowl. "That's me," he said cunningly. "I'm Brother Tuppe." Cornelius slung bullet belts over his high shoulders and snapped a clip of shells into an AK-47. Tuppe regarded the performance with some bewilderment. "Whatever do you think you're doing?" he inquired. "Saving the day, of course." "Cornelius, you don't know how to handle weapons like these. You don't know how to handle any weapons." "There has to be a first time for everything." Cornelius fed cartridges into the 45 long slide and tucked it into his belt. "Leave it to number 6 here, if he's trained in everything." "My job." "My job? This isn't funny anymore." "Pays plasma rifle in the 40-watt range," said Brother Six. "These are near enough. They really get the job done." He pushed a shell the size of a baked bean can into the breech, slammed it shut, and handed the outlandish demi-cannon to Cornelius. "Oh, get real, please!" Tuppe began to jump up and down. "Let's go." Cornelius cocked the fierce plasma rifle. "We're all going to die." The tall boy turned to his lesser chum. "Listen," he said, "I'm going to save your uncle if it's not already too late. If you don't feel up to it, I quite understand. You can wait down here until it's all over." "What?" Tuppe shook his head with vigour. "I give you all the opportunity to say I'll be back. No chance. Where are those derringers?" Felix be marched from the workroom, booted down the stairs, dragged across the courtyard, manhandled along the gallery, and slung through the narrow doorway into the abbot's study. Now he lay in a heap on the floor, bruised and bemused. Some mysterious sixth sense told him that he'd possibly chosen the wrong brother to impersonate. "I wonder where all this is leading," he wondered. The Campbell suddenly snatched up Felix, lifted him high in the air, and flung him down into the abbot's vacant chair. Felix kept his face covered as best he could. "Brother Tuppe." The Campbell bopped Felix on the head with his pistol. "We meet at last." "Ouch," said Felix. "The papers. I want them all, and I want them now." The mysterious sixth sense informed Felix that to answer, "What papers?" would probably be to quote another bop on the head. "Yeah," said Felix. "The papers. Yes, indeed." "Well then,
Well then, and then some, thought Felix. You couldn't be a little more specific, I suppose. I have so many papers. He flinched in expectation, but curiously the blow didn't come. The Hugo Rune papers. The Campbell's voice came close at his ear. Ah, said Felix brightly, then I can help you there. Excellent, excellent. The Campbell gave the abbot a perfunctory kick. Hear that? Felix peeped down at the abbot. And who is this bondage freak in the gossamer posing pouch, he wondered. The abbot peered up at Felix. And who is this strange monk sitting in my chair, he wondered. Brother Six led the way up from the armoury. He now sported Los Angeles police issue body armour and travelled, like John Wesley Harding, with a gun in every hand. Behind him, and somewhat overburdened by the hardware department, Cornelius yomped unsteadily. 2 steps down from Cornelius, Tuppe followed on. He felt a certain concern for the way his friend tottered from side to side. And behind Tuppe came his enigmatic shadow. It bumped noiselessly up the stairs, but it squirmed and writhed in a manner which was not pleasing to gaze upon. No, said Campbell, sucking upon his cigar and blowing smoke up at a ceiling which vaulted downwards rather than up. The papers. The papers, said Felix. Yes. Where are they? In the suitcase, said Felix helpfully. Which is where? On top of the wardrobe. And where's the wardrobe? At my mum's house. And where is your bloody mum's house? The mysterious sixth sense warned Felix it might be well to answer this question with extreme precision. 23 Ragnarok's Terrace, Sheila Nagi, he blurted out. Sheila Nagi. Sheila Na bloody Gee. Felix shielded his head as best he could. It's true, all the plans and stuff, my dad's stuff. Please don't hit me again. Sheila na bloody Gee. Campbell was ranting around the room. He kicked the abbot's desk, he kicked the abbot's bookshelves, he kicked the abbot for good measure. Finally he turned upon Felix. Right you. He hauled the cowering McMurdo from the abbot's chair. You're coming with me. Hamish! Hamish, who'd been quietly picking his nose in a corner, stiffened to attention. Yes, sir. Hamish, go out to the courtyard and tell Angus he can stop holding the monks hostage. Yes, sir. Tell him to shoot them all instead. Hennibald, said the abbot. Shut up, you! The Campbell aimed a mighty kick. Then, Hamish, you and Angus can feel free to burn down this monastery. Oh, thanks, said Hamish. I'll enjoy that. Where's Sonny? I'm here. Oh, so yeah. Sonny, you go out the front and put a couple of rounds through Cornelius Murphy. We won't be needing him any longer. Hamish and Sonny squeezed through the abbot's narrow yellow doorway and out into the gallery. Here they became cleanly cut and colourful images in the high-tech macroscopic 40-watt laser sight of Murphy's phase plasma rifle. Would you put your hands up, please? Cornelius asked from the shadow of an irregularly spaced column. Who said that? Hamish cocked his pistol.
Drop your weapons, you're surrounded.
Even without the benefit of the thermos flask, Tuppe's police chief through loudhailer voice was still very convincing. Who said that? Sawney pulled out his pistol and cocked it in a likewise fashion. Tell them again, whispered Cornelius.
No, with your hands held high,
went Tuppe. No, I won't. Hamish fired his gun at the hidden policeman. The small fellow ducked even closer to the floor as a bullet whistled by, ricocheted off the column and struck one of the great paintings. Saint Sebastian took it like a man. Hamish glanced up at the punctured pausing pouch. Gotcha, he chuckled. Cornelius, that maniac just shot at me. That does it. Cornelius flipped the cover from the firing button. Stay behind the column and leave this to me. Your job? Yes, indeed. Fire down your weapons, Cornelius shouted. This is your final warning. The 2 wild warriors blew raspberries and waggled their bums about. All right then, you asked for it. Cornelius stepped boldly from the shadow. A single shaft of sunlight caught him to heroic perfection as he angled up the mighty gun and squeezed the trigger. A gout of blue flame roared from the barrel. The recoil from the demi-cannon threw Cornelius from his feet. The discharge vaporised a 3-foot circle of wall above the abbot's little yellow doorway. Within the study, a bookcase exploded, hurling blistered tomes of an antique nature down upon Felix, the abbot, and the Campbell. What the? Oh, damn! The Campbell hopped about amidst the smoke and chaos. Queer, guttural sounds rose from his throat, and his already distorted head began to bulge and pulse. Weird tendrils sprouted from his eyebrows and thrashed violently. Burning books smashed into the curtains, setting them ablaze. The abbot rolled around trying to break free. Felix assumed the fetal position. Blimey! The 2 wild warriors in the gallery gawped at the smoking hole. What kind of gun is that? Hamish asked.
Get up! Get up! Tuppe tugged at Cornelius. You've definitely got them worried. I think my shoulder's breaking. Brother Six, who'd been keeping something of a lower profile, stamped out his cigarette. Shall I have a pup of him? He asked, reaching down for the demi-cannon. I can manage, thank you. Cornelius struggled to his feet. Stick up your reins, he shouted. Where did they go? He asked. Tuppe squinted along the gallery. It was rapidly filling with smoke. I think they're hiding, the coyote castards. Come out now, or I'll... Cornelius mimed a gun thrust and trigger squeeze. It was a hair trigger, very sensitive. As blue flame grouted again, Cornelius toppled back into Brother Six. There was a further explosion, more brickwork reduced to its subatomic components. We're all going to die! Tuppe crossed himself. Not a bit of it. We have superior firepower. Help me up, please. Tuppe helped him up. I'm winded here, Brother Six complained. A strange and eldritch Campbell tore down the blazing curtains and stamped out the flames. What's going on here? He fumed. Who did that? From his earliest years, Felix had learned that it was always prudent to respond to the latter question with the words, "It wasn't me." It wasn't me, he whimpered. I know it wasn't you. The Campbell caught the cowering Felix by the scruff of the habit and dragged him to his feet. The cow fell away and the two found themselves staring face to face. You. The Campbell stepped back in amazement. You! I know you. Went Felix, recoiling in no small horror. You've got tentacles growing out your bunts. In the courtyard, monks were flexing their hidden talents and muttering amongst themselves. What were those bangs? They wanted to know. And what about all this smoke? Angus, for his part, was the epitome of passivity and aloof detachment, stressing the inadvisability of positive involvement and the potentially insalubrious consequences of pertaining thereto. Stay out of it, or I'll shoot you dead, was the way he put it. Cornelius marched forward, big gun at the ready. Brother Six was close behind Cornelius, and Tuppe was quite close behind Brother Six, and he did have his derringer out. Not that he had too much intention of using it. Hamish still had a bit of fight left in him. He fired his gun again. So Cornelius fired his. Two of the irregularly spaced columns supporting the floor above came down, and then a lot of poorly plastered ceiling. Up in his workroom, Brother Ray said, "Oh my goodness," as the floor sank beneath him. He clung to his stool with one hand whilst clawing at the work table with the other, and his clawing fingers just happened to draw down the on switch of the sing-along McMurdo. Went the karaoke machine, warming up. Oh no, went Brother Raid, going down. The Campbell rose above the terrified Felix. All semblance of humanity had dropped away from the erstwhile wild warrior. Extraordinary metamorphoses were on the go. The Campbell's eyes expanded, became spherical, became two small globes of the earth which began to revolve in different directions. The Campbell's nostrils spread, became twin tunnels. A tiny blue train issued from the left one, went doo-doo and vanished into the right. The Campbell's mouth grew wide. A paper-thin tongue unrolled. It had a feather on the end. The feather tickled McMurdo's nose. A concealed hooter went, "Aah!" Terror became entrancement. Felix stared in wonder. The tentacles thrashing from the eyebrow areas of whatever this was wound themselves together into a tight cone, became a little silver hand. A pink pom-pom appeared upon the top. The Campbell held up what might have been his right hand. It appeared now to be a bunch of bananas. He held it towards Felix. From the palm, the skin extruded into an ectoplasmic form, and this congealed into a slim disc. The disc became a paper plate. The plate wavered. Onto it, a pastry base materialised. Within this base, substances bubbled and frothed. Became an amalgam of eggs, milk, sugar, cornflour, salt, natural flavouring, stabiliser E415, and anti-caking agent E341. Became custard. The Campbell held the custard pie at arm's length, drew it back, and then smacked Felix right in the face with it. "Oh, no," Brother Eight continued. Went Hamish and Sonia's. A goodly amount of lath and plaster, wormy floorboards, brick dust, and rubble descended upon him. With this came an added bonus of broken pop-up toasters, transistor radios, kitchen blenders, bedside teas-made machines. Whatever happened to them, eh? 500,000 small screws and one small monk. "Gotcha," cried Cornelius, invisibly in the dust. Went the karaoke machine upstairs, growing nice and hot. It was all too much for Angus. He was a man of action. Being lumbered with standing out here in the courtyard holding a gun and a lot of boring monks wasn't his scene at all. He swung his pistol in the direction of the latest brouhaha. Seizing the opportunity, 3 muscular monks brought him down and sat upon him.
Cornelius coughed and gagged. He shook dust from his hair, swatted lathes from his shoulders, flung aside the demi-cannon, pulled the 45 long slide from his belt, cocked it dramatically and kicked fallen debris aside. Digged him out and arrested him, he told Brother Six. Tuppe, where are you? Are you all right? I think so, answered two identical voices. Clever. Cornelius nodded appreciatively. Even better than the police chief threw lad, Hailer. Okey-doke, let's go. Cornelius put his foot to the abbot's narrow yellow door, kicked it open, and leapt into the room with the gun in both hands, shouting, "Don't anybody move." Gracious, he continued, drawing to a halt. Although smoke still wreathed in the devastated study, the sunlight streaming through the ruins of the stained-glass window illuminated a scene which was not altogether without interest, especially for the aspiring student of fine art, encapsulating, as it did, 3 textbook examples of separate and contradictory schools, juxtaposed in a manner which said, "Now discuss." Cornelius viewed the abbot with an uncensorous eye, savouring the sensitive chiaroscuro with the mottled sunlight played upon the smoothly muscled torso of the reclining nude, reminiscent of the now legendary Michelangelo di Caravaggio at his most tenderly exquisite. Contrasted to this, there was Felix Henderson McMurdo. He stood, utterly motionless, clad in his monkish attire, the custard pie still firmly in place across his laughing gear. One for all lovers of surrealism here, and no mistake. Cornelius thought to discern the influence of Max Ernst and Salvador Dali, along with the rollicking heretical humour of Clovis Truel. The third piece of work was not the Murphy's taste at all. It was one of those pretentious disposable affairs, wrought apparently from foodstuffs now well past their sell-by dates, composed into a gross parody of the human form, a mildewed melon for the head, and the leftovers from the Portobello Road fruit market making up the rest. A slight breeze brought its taint to the nose of Cornelius Murphy, causing him to clutch at his nostrils and ruefully conclude that its creator had obviously done a great deal too much acid back in the 60s. Went Cornelius. "Don't just stand there going blurg, young man," said the Caravaggio, suddenly rolling in his direction. "Shoot it!" Went the pretentious disposable affair, taking life in an alarming fashion. It split into its component parts, and these flew at Cornelius. A torrent of mouldy fruit, stale pies and pasties, festering cheese, maggot-ridden vegetables, and general horridness swept across the study. Cornelius ducked beneath it, too startled to let fly with his gun. The festering foodstuffs hurtled over his head and swung through the narrow doorway. "Don't let it escape!" cried the struggling abbot. "Get after it! Shoot it! Shoot it!" Cornelius leapt to his feet, flung himself through the doorway, tripped straight over Tuppe, and fell flat on his face. He would recall, once he regained consciousness, that the last thing he glimpsed was a stream of soupy non-consumables flowing down the gallery to vanish through the open monastery door, and the last thing he heard was the distinctive 3-chord riffing of Status Quo, blasting down through the hole in the gallery ceiling, singing something about 35 happy years together.